separated and know the fullness of the blessing of the fatherhood of God. In fact, in 2 Samuel 7:14, it says about that son, he'll build a house for my name, and it refers to Solomon and then further to the Messiah. And I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. I'll be a father to him, and he'll be a son to me. But when he commits iniquity, Solomon, I'll correct him with a rod of men and the strokes of the sons of men. He'll be my son, and I'll have all this blessing for him. But if he violates me, I'll have to correct him. And that's the choice we have. Every son whom the Lord loves, he scourges, according to Hebrews. So you have your choice, scourging or blessing. And it all goes back to obedience. So God said to David, the son Solomon, if he obeys me, I'll bless him. If he doesn't, I'll chasten him. The idea is that God embraces with blessing those who separate themselves from sin. Now, when you became a Christian, you received the authority to become a child of God. God is your father, and you are his son and his daughter. You have received in such gracious form all the richness of that parenthood from God. But any alliance that defiles, anything that interrupts this wonderful communion with God, then cuts off blessing. God is our Father, and we are his children. And we must repudiate all contaminating religious alliances with darkness and lawlessness and sin and Satan, or we will be chastened, and we will forfeit blessing. Well, that promise was given to David and to David's son Solomon. And you know the sad story? Turn to 1 Kings, chapter 11. Solomon did not listen, he did not obey, and he just made one unholy alliance after another. He was the supreme compromiser. Chapter 11 of 1 Kings and verse 1 tells the sad story. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women. You might say he never saw a woman he didn't like. I mean, he was the prototypical womanizer. King Solomon loved many foreign women along with the daughter of Pharaoh. He didn't even care who they were. And of course, the daughter of Pharaoh would be as pagan can get and would have all kinds of idols and false gods. He loved Moabites, Ammonites, Edomites, Sidonians, and Hittite women. All of them from the nations concerning which the Lord had said to the sons of Israel, you shall not associate with them. Neither shall they associate with you. You can't go either way. Why? Because, listen to me carefully, their society is indistinguishable from their religion. Their societies, their cultures were dominated by their deities. You can't associate with them. Because if you enter into any alliance, any religious participation, you can't participate in their religion. You can't let them participate in yours, for they will surely turn your heart away after their gods. God said that, and Solomon ignored it and held fast to these women in love. He ignored it. To show you how far gone this guy was, he had 700 wives. Now, one wife can turn a man away. 700 working on him. He had princesses. He had 300 concubines. The wives were the princesses. He was the king. 300 concubines. Those were just extra women in case he got bored with the 700. And his wife turns his heart away. Why? Because they all had their own gods. They all had their own deities. They were all pagans. It came about when Solomon was old. His wives turned his heart away after other gods. And his heart was not wholly devoted to the Lord his God as the heart of David, his father, had been. Is that sad? You would think that Solomon was so wise. When he was asked what he wanted wisdom from God. He was all around the truth all the time. But boy, when you expose yourself to the influence of idolatry, it is devastating. I'll never forget a young man with whom I had a close association in seminary. One of the most tragic things, we were dear friends. We participated in all kinds of activities together. He was headed to the ministry as I was. We graduated from Talbot Seminary the same year. He married a Buddhist. It wasn't long until there was a Buddhist altar in his house. It wasn't long until he'd abandoned the faith. One wife. You know, whenever I see men who are notably in the mainstream of the church and evangelicalism, and all of a sudden they seem to fall off into some serious deviation or error, I always want to ask, what is the wife like? Certainly in many, many cases, if not most, That's where Satan's subtleties enter in. Solomon, according to verse 5, went after Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and after Milcom, the detestable idol of the Ammonites. And Solomon did what was evil in the sight of the Lord and didn't follow the Lord fully as David his father had done. And Solomon built a high place for Chemosh, the detestable idol of Moab, on the mountain which is east of Jerusalem, and for Molech, the detestable idol of the sons of Ammon. Thus also he did for all his foreign wives who burned incense and sacrificed to their gods. Now the Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart was turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice. You'd think if he had 2 personal visits from God, he wouldn't have trouble holding on to his theology, but he did. And had commanded him concerning the thing that he should not go after other gods, but he didn't observe what the Lord had commanded. So the Lord said to Solomon, because you have done this, and you've not kept my covenant, my statutes, which I have commanded you, I will surely tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. That's what happens when you make unholy alliances. God just rips the blessing right out of your hand. Go over to chapter 11, verse 31. And here is Jeroboam, whom you know came in to be the king following Solomon when the kingdom split. And this Ahijah, the prophet, speaks to Jeroboam in verse 31. Take for yourself 10 pieces, for thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, behold, I'll tear the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon and give you 10 tribes. So 10 tribes are ripped out of the hand of Solomon, and 10 of them go to the north. But he will have 1 tribe for the sake of my servant David, and that was Benjamin, who was given with Judah in the south, the city which I have chosen from the tribes of Israel. Because they have forsaken me and worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and all of that. And he goes through the whole scenario. The kingdom was split. It was ripped out of Solomon's hand. It was tragically divided. There never was another good king in the north. You come all the way down to verse 38. And then it will be, he says to Jeroboam, verse 37, I will take you, and you shall reign over whatever you desire, and you shall be king over Israel. But then he says, then it will be that if you listen to all that I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my sight by observing my statutes and my commandments as my servant David did, then I will be with you and build you an enduring house as I built for David, and I will give Israel to you. Again, God comes right back and says, I'm tearing this kingdom to pieces, but if you'll just obey me, I'll bless you. It's the same point. When you make unholy alliances, you are cursed. When you don't, you are blessed. God, who is Father, desires to pour out the best of his loving gifts on his children, and he'll do just that if we are not bound together with unbelievers. So summing up what we've said then, if we are bound together with unbelievers in any spiritual enterprise, it is irrational, it is sacrilegious, it is disobedient, and it is unprofitable. There's one more point. It's a very important one, and it's in verse 1 of chapter 7. It is ungrateful. It is ungrateful. He says in verse 1, therefore, having these promises, beloved, let us